Hi, everyone. It's Charlene Lee, and I am live casting today from Dublin, Ireland. My first time here, and here for the Consumer Goods Forum, taking a break from the festivities there to do this live stream. And I'm excited to be talking about kindness today. And in particular, what is it that's important about kindness to being a disruptive leader? So, as you're coming in today, I would love for you to share what is it that you do? How do you use kindness to be a better leader? Share in the comments here. I'll try to share as many of those back. How do you use kindness to be the best disruptive leader to create the type of organization that you want to see taking on all these new audacious things that people do? And that's what I want to talk about today around what it does it mean to be kind. And this is again one of the findings of a new report that we just put out at PA called "A New Way to Lead." And one of the most interesting findings and the recommendations we have is to cultivate kindness. And I found this to be such an interesting finding from the report, is because you don't necessarily equate being kind with being a strong leader. In many ways, sometimes people think that, well, if you're kind, if you're nice, then you're a weak leader. I can't tell you how many times, again, maybe because I'm a woman, because I tend to be nice and kind, that I am a mother, so I'm very nurturing in the way I approach things, that people say to me, you're too nice, you're too kind. And there's a belief that being kind means that you can't make tough decisions, to be making decisions in challenging times. And if anything, I believe that being kind allows you to do these things, to do these tough things, because the relationship is so much stronger between you and the people you are leading. So, again, please take a look at this report. It has some really interesting findings. And also, again, please share what are some of the ways that you use kindness to be a stronger leader. So, a couple of things. The reason why I want to talk about why kindness is so important, especially if you are trying to create disruption, trying to lead a huge amount of change and transformation, there are a couple of things. First of all, kindness is probably the most direct way to give your people agency, to give them that sense of power to be able to try new things and to do their best work, to take the risks, because there's this deeper understanding, connection, and relationship between you and them. When there is that relationship, when that kindness comes in, it gives people such a strong sense of confidence that they are feeling like they can do anything. I like to talk about the power that my leaders gave me early in my career that made me feel limitless, because they had this belief, they were kind, supportive, and just took the time to understand who I was as a person, that gave me that confidence again to just try lots of things, to make mistakes, to know that forgiveness was going to come my way. And there's a lot of research that shows us. There's research that shows that kindness releases serotonin, oxytocin, and dopamine, things that give you a sense of helper's high, not only to the people, but to yourself as the giver of kindness. So, for those of us who exhibit kindness, practice kindness, create a culture of kindness, we know that we feel great and the people around us feel great. So, why wouldn't you do this? Well, a couple of things. The reason why a lot of people don't do it is because they feel that it lessens them, it makes them weaker. That if you are kind, it's easy for people to take advantage of you. And I actually think it's just the opposite. It can oftentimes be harder to be kind than to be unkind. And one of the biggest examples of that is when you're giving feedback to people. We oftentimes feel like we're being kinder to people if you don't tell them the hard news, talk to them about the hard decisions that have to be made. But if you understand that you are being kind by telling them the truth, by being doing it so in a compassionate way, that's really hard. And when we're doing that, taking that moment to think about how do we give the feedback in a constructive, compassionate way to further that relationship that you have with somebody, then that in itself is being kind and compassionate. And you have to be strong in order to do that. You have to be strong in your leadership to be kind. And the reason why it takes a lot of strength is because of this. I'm just looking at my notes here. One of the most difficult things to do when you're in the thick of things, when things are going wrong, when there's a challenge, is to be self aware, to understand how you are walking into a situation with various biases, to have that personal confidence, to know that you have this mindset that sees the goodness in everyone, in every situation, no matter how hard it is, and to realize that people are doing their best. Because unless you can have that sense of goodness, of this sense of responsibility, of sitting in that place where you can see all aspects of the situation, that requires a strong sense of self, of awareness, to be able to understand the situation and see it from multiple perspectives. When you have mindfulness of your own natural instincts of how you would react in a bad situation, in a challenging situation, then you can step back, see the big picture, and be compassionate, have empathy, and be kind in the situation to help everyone rise to their higher self. So the last thing I would say is this is a very different type of kindness than from being a parent and a child. There's a type of relationship that's very parochial, a little bit of looking down to a child and say, well, I'll be kind to you because you're weak. You need my help. In a work relationship, it's very different. The kindness is much more around peers, a sense of that I see you, I know you, and respect you. And that's where this kindness comes from. It's a very empowering, agency giving type of kindness. So, what are some of the benefits of kindness to people and the individuals themselves? Some of the research shows that just by receiving kindness, receiving compliments and praise and recognition, these moments of feeling self worth and building self confidence is really important because praise really aligns with this positive view that people want to have of themselves. And they may not be feeling it that moment, but feeling and seeing that other people think highly of you, appreciate you, have gratitude for you can be a huge boost in self esteem and self confidence. But as I mentioned before, it also is extremely meaningful to the person who's giving the kindness to as well. One of the things is that when we invest in someone else's well being, it takes us out of ourselves, helps us see that we are being a good person, that we are giving as well. And it reinforces our need and ability to be helpful, to be of a source of goodness and goodwill. And the acts of kindness make us feel better, as well as the people who are receiving the kindness feel better. So it's a full circle. It's one of those things that kindness begets kindness. And when you have that, it creates a culture of kindness. And we know from research that kindness is one of the things that lead to so many benefits to organizations. I'm just going to read off a couple of those things. First of all, loyalty. Employees in organizations where leaders are kind are twice as likely to stay for at least another 12 months. So it begets loyalty amongst your employees. Quality, two times as likely to say that their team produces outstanding quality work when there's kindness in the leadership. Organizations with kind leaders are three times to be as engaged. They're more likely to say they're highly motivated in their roles and wanting to engage and participate and give even more. And then when it comes to financial performance, respondents were almost twice as likely to report that their companies were performing well financially when leaders were kind. And of course, there's the overall positive culture that becomes a part of the way that culture works when there is kindness. A study of 50,000 individuals and 3,500 companies found that acts of courtesy, of people helping each other, of even just praise and saying thank you, were related to the core goals of the organization and led to higher productivity, efficiency, and lower turnover. So cultures of kindness lead to cultures of collaboration, cultures of innovation, overall, all the things that we want to have as disruptive leaders. So I want to take a moment and just see if there are comments. Jay Johnson says, isn't kindness just putting the needs of others ahead of yourself? In many ways, it's as simple as that. You absolutely agree, Jay. And it's really putting others' needs in front of yours, or the needs of the company or the organization before yours. And so kindness again goes back to that one thing I said, which is it goes beyond just your self-interest, the interests of your organization and you, to be able to think about what the interests of other people are. And we'll talk a little bit more about this when we get into the actions that we can take. And Jay, just to close up the comments here, some great comments here, that trust is what you're actually building, and it leads to credibility. And that's such a good point because leadership is, in the end, all about credibility. It's not about the title, it's not about the budget you have, but are you a credible leader to the people you are hoping to inspire to do these audacious things? And that requires trust. Um, and we have here from Khalid, it's more likely empathy and appreciation. Absolutely. Kindness is a key part of all of that, but we don't explicitly call out kindness as one of the components of appreciation and empathy. It is a mindset that says, I am going to be actually intentionally kind. What does that mean to be kind? And I do feel that this is one of those things where I sometimes get called on this. I go, well, isn't that a very feminine kind of way of thinking about leadership? And kindness is associated with that. No, I think kindness is a human trait, not just necessarily a feminine or a masculine trait. We all crave kindness. We crave that moment of consideration when somebody takes an extra moment, goes out of the way to do something for you because they care about you. And I think we all could use a little bit more kindness, a little bit more of that consideration in all aspects of our life, but especially in our workplace and from our leaders. Shaquille says, I love these comments, people. Keep them going. Empathy is a business skill, and I absolutely agree. Empathy is one of the highest callings that we can have as leaders, and I'll talk about that in a second. Because when we truly empathize with people, when we can step out of our own shoes and stand in somebody else's shoes, that's when we really begin to understand each other. And when we have and use empathy and kindness, because kindness is the expression of empathy in an action, then we also encourage people to have empathy and express that in acts of kindness back to us in the organization. Errol, can you please share the links to the study? I don't have them here, but I will put them into the links. I usually publish a article on Fridays after these live streams, and I'll make sure the links to those studies are in that article. It's probably the easiest way to share those notes. And if I can, I'll share them into this live stream, but it always cuts me off, but I will try to respond back into your comment, Errol, so that you can see those links too as well. Oh, great. Some other key comments here. Khalid says, work on building a culture of collaboration rather than competition. That's so interesting that we think we're collaborating oftentimes in an organization, but if we don't set it up the right way, it turns into a competition between groups or people, even within the same team, to try to show that we're doing better than somebody else. And Safat, thank you for this. It's just as simple as being human. It is innate in us. You look at children, yeah, they can be mean, they can be selfish, grabbing their toys from each other, but they're just as likely to be kind to each other, to take care of each other, to look out for each other. So thank you for all of those comments. I do want to go into now just what are the traits of a kind leader? What are the behaviors of kind leaders? What do we do as leaders? What can we do better in order to be kind? The first one is to establish and be committed to establishing real relationships with people. We all know that, that the most human aspect of this, and Safat, to your point, the most human thing we want is to be known, to be seen, to be understood, to be heard. So listening, being genuinely curious about other people, to ask, what's going on in your life? How are you doing? And to say and demonstrate in your responses back to people, I hear you, I see you, I understand you. This is what I'm hearing and seeing. Did I get it right? And it's showing that the more you know about them, the more you have empathy for them, the more you care for them, those are the cornerstones and the foundations for kindness. Because when you show that you care for them more than just what they do for you as a leader or for the organization. It's showing that you're going the extra mile to understand them. And in return, they're going to do the extra mile because they have taken the time to also understand you, your motivations, and the organization's goals too, as well. But it goes more than just what's happening in that work relationship, that we really care about each other as people. So the things that you can say, again, I'm just going to paraphrase some of these sayings. Say this more often. Ask the questions. I think this is what you're saying. This is the underlying thing that's going on. Did I get that right? Do I understand you accurately? Am I seeing you fully? And this is especially true for people who may not be in the majority of your organization. I know that as a woman, as a person of color, I often have had to check things at the door to not talk about everything that's going on because I didn't perceive that it would be received well or that it wasn't my place to bring these more personal issues into the workplace. And when I have had leaders who say, "Hey, what's going on? You seem stressed." And they genuinely want to know what's going on in my life so they can better understand me and to be able to support me. It has meant the world. So I'm just going to go through here and have a couple things here. We have Khalid who says, being a good listener is a part of kindness. Absolutely. And most importantly, is being genuine with your kindness. Otherwise, it won't last very long. Absolutely. You can tell when people are faking it because you can tell when they're just going through the routine and feel like they've been told, go and check in with people. Do they genuinely care? Do they genuinely see this as a way to slow things down, to take the time so that they can speed up? I hear from so many leaders that, I would love to do this, but we just simply don't have time. We've got to get things done. We're under deadline. We're behind. We've got huge goals. We don't have time to sit and get to know each other because it's not going to be very fruitful. And I think the best disruptive leaders understand, oh no, that time is absolutely essential for you to take. Because if you don't take it, then the worst things happen. You don't have that relationship in place. You don't understand everything that's happening. That is such a key thing. Okay, the second thing I would say is to encourage growth. Once you know and understand people, then how can you encourage each person? Sorry, my desk here is very wobbly today. How do you encourage each person to reach their fullest potential? One of the things I do that gets me motivated and gets me out of bed every day is to maximize human potential. I'm a maximizer. It's one of my strengths is I like to see the potential for every single situation for each person. And I just want to just support that to the best degree that I can. So, how can you go beyond just satisfying the sort of lower levels of Maslow's hierarchy of needs of safety, security, a job, income, food, and water, to go into areas of self actualization where you can offer people opportunities and encourage them to grow, to reach their full potential, to gain a higher sense of self worth? So, the things you can say are, what can I do to support you? How can I best support you in achieving the goals you have here today within the job, but also outside of life, outside of the job in your life? How can I support you? And this is where words really matter. This is not, how can I best help you? Because that implies that they need help, that they are in a weak position, that you are in a position of strength. Support says very differently. I know you're already doing your best. You're rocking it. How can I better support you in achieving your goals? So the use of the words help versus support really denotes a key difference in your relationship. So this is about encouraging growth, not supporting them in areas of weakness, but leaning into their strengths and say, how do we accelerate you? How do you make you the best to reach that full potential? So just want to see some of the other comments here. Um, we have Mauricio with a different kind of comment here. I think the challenge for kindness in leadership is that common sense that says that tough guys are better leaders than those who are considered nice, as if a kind person is not capable of making hard or difficult decisions. I think you're so right. If you think about the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, one of the things that she talks about is, don't mistake kindness and empathy with weakness. And she has made some really tough decisions over the past few years as prime minister to be able to lead her country through so many social justice crises, racial tensions, COVID. And she's a great demonstration of that being kind, being empathetic does not mean that you're not tough, also. So it's great to have leaders like that really leading the way. The third thing I would say, so the first one is establish real relationships. Say constantly, how can, did I get it right? Do I hear and understand you accurately? The second thing is encourage growth. What can I do to support you? The third thing is to have that empathy and that big heart to ask when things are going wrong, when things are challenging. Just ask a simple question. How are you doing? Are you okay? We saw that during COVID, that employee engagement went up tremendously over the first few months, and especially after June, with social justice questions and issues, especially with George Floyd's murder. People were asking and checking in, "How you doing? You okay?" Employee engagement went through the roof. And it was one of the first times we saw this huge acceleration from the Gallup employee engagement surveys of people thinking, yeah, I'm much more engaged. And it was a simple act of kindness of people checking in with each other to say, how are you doing? And it went back down again as we went back to normal everyday kind of work. So this simple thing, having that ability to say, are you okay? And it's especially important when things are not going well. To check in with somebody, like if everything is blowing up around you, crisis is happening. The first thing you can say is, how are you doing? Let's fix this. Let's talk about how you're doing to make sure everything's okay. Let's fix this problem. And we'll talk about what went wrong later on. Let's deal with things, stabilize things, and just saying we'll take care of each other as we go through this, and we'll figure out later on what happened wrong so we can correct it for the future. But instead of saying, oh my goodness, everything's blowing up, whose fault is this? Having empathy for the situation and really understanding that everyone is trying to do their best, and that sense of space and support to say that I know everyone's trying to do their best. We may be making mistakes, but in genuine experience, in genuine effort has been made to try to do our best, and thinking again that nobody's actually trying to intentionally fail. The fourth thing again is to, practice the general niceties of life, to express gratitude, to say thank you, to say to somebody, you're doing a great job. I really appreciate you, to recognize people and acknowledge the effort that people have put in. And especially in a time of Zoom and Teams meetings where we're remote from each other, you come into a meeting and you're starting right on time, getting through the agenda, and you're leaving. We don't have that serendipitous opportunities to say to people, in that meeting, you did a great job. That was excellent. I know you put in a lot of work. Thank you for that. Or to say, I appreciate you. I just appreciate your approach to things, how you always show up ready to engage, or to have gratitude and to say to someone, I am so grateful that you did this work. You went above and beyond. We don't do that enough. And each of those are acts of kindness when we take in the time to recognize something beyond ourselves, to do it privately, and also especially to do it publicly. These things are important. So setting aside time in meetings to do a kindness round, to say, does anybody have a gratitude or a recognition they want to share, any words of praise for each other? And that's how you can systematically do this. And also as a leader to be constantly setting an example of saying thank you, to express gratitude to each other. And the last area that I'll talk about, a key trait, is to give honest feedback. I've talked about in these live streams in my articles about how important it is to have feedback, a system of feedback, a culture of feedback. Because when that happens, you're giving feedback again. That was a great job. But you're also making it much easier to say, hey, can I give you a moment of feedback? And to say, this is a situation. We had a meeting. The behavior, I saw this behavior, and the impact was this positive, negative, whatever it is. But to give that constantly give good feedback, structured feedback, thoughtful feedback. Because when you do that, it's given again in the spirit of kindness and compassion. It's given in the spirit of you want to support people's growth to help them reach that potential. And giving good feedback, we oftentimes think we're not going to give feedback, not give honest feedback to somebody because it could potentially hurt them. And we think that's an act of kindness, and it's not. When you withhold feedback, you are actually being unkind. You are not giving people the benefit of the doubt that they can handle that feedback. You are not going on beyond your own discomfort of giving that feedback to be able to help someone be better, to realize their full potential. So, giving honest feedback is one of the biggest tests of leadership. Can you be strong enough and confident enough in the relationship that you have to be able to do that? And I use the example frequently that one of the hardest things I ever had to do was to give feedback to my manager that they had really bad body odor because nobody else had the guts to do that. And so when I finally went through this process and I said, I'm actually being kind by telling them this is the situation. I'm not being unkind because it's coming from a place of empathy and compassion. And that relationship with that manager, again, stayed very strong, very true, and deeper because of that moment of kindness. And it took a tremendous amount of strength to do that. So that's what I have for today. Just wanted to give a couple examples of why kindness is so important because it builds us and allows us to be the best leaders we can be. It creates this robustness in our leadership. So I think this is a really important part for us to practice, to understand it. And I love this comment from Khalid. The more mature the leader is, the more kindness practices applied in your organizations. I love this, Khalid. I think it's a matter of maturity, but I also think it's a matter of wisdom. Because I've seen some leaders early in their career, they're just beginning, but they have this practice of kindness. They are just by nature kind, they're compassionate, they exercise a lot of empathy. So there's this innate wisdom in people that comes from being aware of the situation around them and then being able to focus again on the particular things that need to happen. And in particular, these practices of saying thank yous, having gratitude, of giving honest feedback, of taking the time to truly and deeply understand people and where they're coming from. That's partly a mature leader, but there's also some innate people who are wise. And it's something, again, that can be taught. These five practices that I talked about can be trained, which is why I like to use very specific behaviors to say, to ask the question, even if you don't know how to be kind, then ask the question, what can I do to support you? If you don't know how to be kind, then find opportunities to recognize and praise people. If you don't know how to be kind, then look for opportunities to give honest feedback to people and find it within yourself that strength to give that honest feedback. If you don't know where to start, then start by just listening and asking the questions. What's going on? How are you doing? So these natural questions that we can train ourselves, remind ourselves to take on these behaviors will develop the traits and the practices of kindness in our day-to-day activities. All right. I'm going to, at this point, start winding up, and because I know it's at the end of the time that I usually have. Again, I just want to just emphasize and just highlight, amplify the fact that we have this new report out on a new way to lead. It is a fantastic report. You can see it when you just go to the homepage of paconsulting.com. am really excited about some of the findings in there. And again, one of the key findings you're finding there is this idea of cultivating kindness. And next week, I'll be talking about how to develop authentic purpose. It's one of the last findings I'll highlight from the report is that when we are clear about our purpose as leaders for ourselves individually, but also for our organizations, and then, very importantly, can then express it authentically, constantly, and consistently, it brings this unifying factor across the entire organization and deeply, deeply, not only inside, but into our external relationships too, as well. So we'll talk about purpose, how to show up and authentically talk about it, because if you just parrot the purpose line, repeat it, but not actually understand it and live it, it's not going to be the same. So we'll talk about purpose next week, one of my favorite topics. And until then, I hope you have many experiences of providing kindness to the people around you. And I really sincerely hope that you are the recipient of kindness over the next week too, as well. Take care, and I'll see you next week. Thanks.